Let's talk about how close we are to potential World War III and nuclear warfare.
Way too close.
How could this go if it doesn't go? How could this end up in World War III?
I think a couple of different ways, right? So I'm sure that Russia has red lines, some of which we're not even aware of in Ukraine. You get to a situation where is a Russian red line crossed? They're a nuclear power. Do they start using tactical nuclear weapons in eastern Ukraine? If that happens, then probably at least some of the Eastern European countries like Poland have to get involved. That balloons into a World War III scenario. I think the most likely and the most dangerous scenario is Iran and Israel right now. So obviously the Israelis are on high alert. They just had this terrorist attack. They're dealing with Hamas. What if in North Israel, a bunch of Iranian-backed militias start killing thousands of Israeli civilians? Okay, so the Israelis invade, do the Iranians counterattack, and now you have Israel, Iran in a regional conflict. The Turks probably have to get involved. The Saudi Arabians probably have to get involved. And then that is the sort of thing that could balloon into World War III. And then the final thing, man, is China wants Taiwan, right? Everything that we have tells us the Chinese want Taiwan. America, I think, has left Taiwan in a really crappy position because we've sent all our weapons to Ukraine. The Taiwanese, I don't know that they could repel a Chinese invasion right now. And so do the Chinese invade Taiwan? That leads to some sort of accelerating conflict there. So there are basically at least 3 hotspots in the world right now that each have the potential to become a major worldwide conflict. It's really scary. And this is one of the reasons why I say, you don't want an incompetent as president of the United States right now. You go back, look, there are some people I disagreed with. I disagreed with a lot of George W. Bush's foreign policies, obviously disagreed with a lot of Barack Obama's foreign policies, but these were fundamentally capable human beings, right? Donald Trump is a capable human being. I think more than capable, but I'm biased. Kamala Harris is not a capable human being. Do you really want, in the midst of a high-pressure conflict, her negotiating with Xi Jinping about Taiwan? Or do you want her over there in Moscow or Kiev negotiating with the Russians, with Vladimir Putin about the peace settlement in Ukraine? This is scary, scary stuff. And you talk about a person like Kamala Harris who can't even answer a simple question without retreating into slogans and talking points. What about when the cameras are off and she's in a private room with world leaders? That's scary, scary stuff. And that's maybe what worries me about more than any of her domestic policies is what happens if the shit hits the fan? I don't think Kamala Harris can handle it.
Why do you think China hasn't made a move on Taiwan yet? It seems like every chess player on the globe has made the move since the Biden and Kamala took office. And so why hasn't China made their move yet? What are they waiting for?
I think there are a few different explanations, and maybe all of them are true, at least a little bit. I think one thing is, even in a relatively weakened position, it's not an easy military maneuver. So maybe the Chinese don't want to kill a lot of people, especially their own people. Maybe that destabilizes them politically. That's one solution or one possible answer. I think another possible answer is, look, Xi Jinping. My understanding, and this is all guesswork. We're sort of judging with imperfect information, but my understanding is that he is not in the strongest position politically right now, that 5 years ago or maybe 5 years in the future, he'll be in a slightly stronger political position. And so maybe it's more likely to happen, say, not in 2027, as opposed to, so 3 years from now, as opposed to right now. The other thing that you hear is maybe that the Chinese don't think they ultimately need it, right? So maybe we're actually misunderstanding what their calculus is. Maybe their attitude is they can control Taiwan from the outside without ever having to invade it and control it from the inside. And there's probably some element of truth to all those explanations, but I think eventually, my guess is they're eventually going to make a real military move on it. It's probably going to be sooner rather than later. I hope not, but we'll see. Because right now, if they do it, we're not in a good position with the leadership we have.
Those are some perspectives I haven't heard before. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the border.
Sure.
So the border, we have, I hear 11 million, 15 million, 21 million.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's millions and millions and millions of illegal
Correct.
immigrants that are calling the U.S. home now.
That's right.
We're paying for it. You guys have a plan. I'd like to dive into how exactly are you going to go after and remove all of these immigrants?
Yeah. So first, let me preface that because I think you got to stop the bleeding, right? Whenever you got a problem, like, somebody cuts your leg off, stop the bleeding and then figure out how you're going to reattach the leg. The stop the bleeding thing that we have to do is reclose the border, right? Re-implement deportations, re-implement the Remain in Mexico policy. I think people don't fully realize that the reason the border is such a nightmare is that somebody will come into the country, say that they're seeking asylum, and if you're Border Patrol, you have to let them into the country. They get a work permit, they can live in the country for 10, 12, 15 years, and then maybe 10, 12, 15 years later, they get a court date to adjudicate whether their asylum claim is legitimate. But of course, most of them don't show up for that court date, right? So that's one of the main reasons why you have an open border. The way that Trump solved that is he made all these people wait in Mexico while their asylum claim was being adjudicated, which means a lot of people never came to begin with because they didn't want to go to Mexico. They wanted to go to the United States, right? So you re-implement those policies, you get illegal immigration back down much lower. It's well north of 10,000 a day under the last couple of years of Kamala Harris's leadership. Get it much lower, and then you figure out what to do with I think it's probably 25 million illegal aliens who are here right now. So the way I think about this, and I'm asked by the media about this all the time, and I always say, it's like eating a sandwich, right? It's like asking somebody, okay, how are you going to eat this sandwich? It's 10 times as big as your mouth. Well, you take the first bite, then you take the second bite, then you take the third bite, right? You do this sequentially, and I think that's how you have to think about it. So you start with the million illegal aliens who are violent criminals, who have committed violent crimes in the United States of America, and you do everything that you can. You round them up, you get them out of this country. You just have to, right?
How do you know who the criminals are?
Because most of them have actually committed crimes in the country, right? So either they're in American jails or they were released. I mean, Kamala Harris has released a lot of people who are arrested for committing violent crimes, and then some of them go on and commit further violent crimes. Some of them are just bouncing around. They probably are committing crimes but not being caught. But that's a real law enforcement focus. Get the violent criminals out of here and you focus on them. And I think there are a few other things that you got to do to make it, frankly, harder for illegal immigrants to take advantage of the country, right? You got to end the Social Security fraud and the Medicare fraud so that people aren't able to get free benefits, free health care. What I think we ought to do, I actually have a piece of legislation on this in the Senate, is you tax remittances, right? Because you think about somebody comes in here, they're an illegal alien, they're working, and they're sending all their money back home. They're not going to send their money back home if you tax the money that they're sending back home. So they'll go back to their country of origin. And if they want to come, maybe they'll apply for a legal pathway, but they're not going to come in illegally. And then I think you also got to make it harder for employers to hire illegal labor, right? I mean, this is one thing that I think, Republicans, we've got to sort of accept is part of the problem is illegal aliens breaking our laws. Part of the problem is employers are encouraging them to come in and break our laws because they'd much rather pay an illegal alien under the table than pay an American worker.
We talk a lot on this show about protecting your family and being prepared for the worst case scenario. But there's one area of protection that a lot of us, myself included, for a long time tend to procrastinate on, and that's life insurance. I've had term life insurance for several years now. And I remember the exact moment I realized I needed it. It was right around the time my son was born. I started thinking about the mortgage, the kid's education, and all the expenses I'd want covered if the unthinkable happens and I'm not here to provide for them anymore. But having a plan in place is what actually allows you to breathe easier. If you've been putting this off because you think it's too expensive or too much of a hassle, you need to check out Fabric by Gerber Life. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance you can get done today. Made for busy parents like you, all online, on your schedule, right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. A lot of people assume their work-life insurance is enough, but most policies don't provide nearly enough coverage and don't follow you if you leave your job. Fabric offers affordable, high-quality life insurance like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Fabric has partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by families just like yours for over 50 years. And Fabric is rated excellent on Trustpilot with over 1,900 five-star reviews. There's no risk. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee, and
you can cancel at any time. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/srclips. That's meetfabric.com/srclips. meetfabric.com/srclips. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
And so I think you do those things, focus on the criminal migrants, deport the people you've got to deport, make it harder for illegal aliens to work in this country. I think you solve a whole chunk of the problem.
How would you, we tried to lock the border up first go around.
Yep.
What's going to change this go around?
So a couple things. First of all, it wasn't perfect when Trump was president, but man, it was very good. Like you look at the number of illegal border crossings per day, it wasn't zero. You're never going to get it to zero, but man, it was much closer to zero than it's been pretty much at any time in our country's history, at least recent history, right? So you really can, just with some common sense law enforcement approaches, get things to maybe 1,000 illegal crossings a day, 500 illegal crossings a day. That's 1/20th. Right, of what Joe Biden has had and Kamala Harris have had. So that's a big improvement. Now you got to do some other things too. You've got to finish the border wall, right? I think you probably got to empower Border Patrol to do their job a little bit more. One of the problems that Trump had at his first term is that, because we hadn't had a real border crisis in a while, and because you didn't have until Donald Trump somebody who took border enforcement seriously, there was a lot of litigation and legal cases about, well, what is the president actually allowed to do? Because every time he tried to do something new, you'd have somebody file a lawsuit and say, no, the president's not allowed to do this, right? Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that happened is Donald Trump won all those cases, but it happened towards the end of his administration. So he's going to have law enforcement tools during a second term that he didn't have during his first term. And yeah, you got to finish construction of the border wall. There's a lot of cool technology that you can use, AI, infrared. I've seen some crazy stuff where, you put a camera in the desert and it's got, 20-mile line of sight in either direction. And then somebody comes from 8 miles away and the AI can identify, is that a person? Is it a rabbit? Is it a fox? Is it something else? Is it a person with a gun or a person, who's just a little kid? You actually can use technology to identify illegal migrants who are trying to cross the border. You just have to empower law enforcement to do that stuff. And I think that's what Donald Trump wants to do. In fact, I know it's what Donald Trump wants to do. And again, it was quite successful the first term. It can be more successful the second go around.
Very good. Very good. Let's talk about government reform.
Yeah.
So it looks like Elon is going to be on the cabinet and
yeah.
will be in the charge on the government efficiency department, if that's what you call it.
Yep.
How do you see, have you spoken with him about the plan, how he's going to do it?
Well, I've spoken, you mean with the president or with Elon?
With Elon.
With Elon. So I've spoken with Elon a little bit about it. And, I think that the way that this is envisioned is you set up you set up an organization with very smart people from the private sector and a few smart people from government, and you go in and you say, how are we going to fix all the broken inefficiencies? And the thing that's complicated about this, man, is it's going to look much different in, say, the Department of Defense versus Social Security, right? One of the biggest problems in Social Security is fraud. You've got a lot of illegal aliens. I've actually had friends of mine who have had their Social Security account drawn down, and then when they go to the IRS says, oh yeah, an illegal alien used your Social Security number, but we're not allowed to reveal that person's information. A person who's using your Social Security number to defraud you, your own government is saying, we can't tell you who that is, right?
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Crazy stuff is happening out there in this country. So you got to fix that problem. Now that's a Social Security fraud problem. Now at the Department of Defense, right, we've got it's not, so much a fraud problem as it is a procurement problem. So you ask yourself, how do we end up paying 6 times what the Chinese are paying for ships? Or why are we paying 5 times what the Russians are paying for artillery shells? You need somebody to go in there and actually fix that procurement process. And the honest answer, man, and I hate to say it because a lot of these companies do important work, we want our troops to have the best weapons. There are a lot of companies that are getting really rich because Uncle Sam is run by idiots, right? And so you go in and you fix that procurement process, You do less procurement based purely on what something costs and more procurement that tries to, force companies to be a little bit more efficient. So there's a lot that you can do there. And you just got to go department by department. And what makes it complicated is, again, each department is a little bit different from the next one. And I think you just got to, for 4 years, go one right after the other and make this country's government more efficient. I mean, let me give you a statistic, just absolutely insane. So 2019, this government spent about $4.4 trillion, right? That's a lot of money. In 2024, our government will probably spend close to $7 trillion. Okay, so 4.4 to 7, $2.6 trillion of additional spending. A little bit of that is Social Security because you have an aging population. Some of that's fraud, right? Illegal aliens committing fraud. A little bit of that is Medicare because, again, you've got an aging population. But of that $2.6 trillion that we're spending, that's just in 4 years, dude. 4 years, $2.6 trillion. Probably $2.4 trillion of it has nothing to do with Social Security, nothing to do with Medicare. There's a lot of waste, there's a lot of fraud, and there's a lot that we can fix in that $2.4 trillion. Save people a lot of money, allow the private sector to grow instead of destroying the private sector, and also hopefully give people some of their hard-earned money back, because if their government's wasting trillions of dollars, who's paying for that? You are, and I am.
What agencies or departments of government would you start with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that, actually. I think you got to start with fraud in what you might call the welfare system. Okay, so Section 8 housing. Okay, and I believe, by the way, that if somebody's down on their luck, they lose their job. You don't want kids being homeless. Okay, but that program should exist. Number one, for people who are actually down on their luck, and number two, for people who are legally in this country to begin with. So a lot of Section 8 money goes to illegal immigrants, either through fraud or because even though Section 8 housing is not supposed to go to an illegal alien, if you're the son of an illegal alien or the daughter, then you can benefit from that system. So I think you got to go into sort of the welfare system, make sure that it's actually going to the people who are entitled to it and not to, frankly, illegal aliens. That's probably where I'd start, because that would help solve the immigration problem too. So you kind of kill two birds with one stone there. Man, I think the defense procurement process is really broken. And what it means is that we have a lot of weapon systems that are outdated, and we're not doing as much technology innovation in what we're giving our troops. I mean, you know this better than anybody, but like whether we win the war of the future is in large part a technology battle, right? You don't want our troops out there waving around knives when the other guys have guns. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in drone technology. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in underground, or I should say underwater submersibles, unmanned submarines. Like, we should be giving our troops the best stuff. But to do that, you've got to fix how the Defense Department actually buys weapons to begin with.
What about IRS, CIA, FBI?
Yeah, so I don't think the CIA wastes a ton of money. So that's not an efficiency problem, but I think it's corrupt, right? That's just a basic, there's lawlessness within our intelligence services. We know this after the 2016 Russia hoax. I mean, we have to remember there are actually members of the intelligence community who were leaking stories to CNN that Donald Trump was paid off by the Russians. Totally fabricated. None of those people have been fired. And they ran the same playbook in 2020. Remember the Hunter Biden laptop story, that they used our own intelligence services to justify big tech censoring that story, right? Why did Google, Facebook, Twitter, why did they all censor that story? Because some of the members of our own intelligence services, the FBI, the CIA, were telling them, you're not allowed to run this story because it is Russian disinformation, right? So you have to fix that problem. I don't think you save a lot of money doing it, but you make the people's government work better, which is maybe the most important thing.
Interesting. With your discussions with President Trump and Elon Musk, is there any estimation on what percentage of the government we can see go away?
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.